Everybody, welcome to our study of Genesis. We're already off to a very silly start and having a little bit of fun here, so that's okay. For those of you who are watching, we're in Genesis chapter 43 tonight. As always, we'll begin with our review of Genesis 42. Make sure everybody understands the context of the story that we're in. So we go back to 42, and this is all going to kind of get fuzzy and going to roll together because it's all about the same story. It's the same story in multiple chapters. So unlike up to this point where we've been studying Genesis, each chapter seems to tell a different story. This is all the same story. So when we last met, all right, we were talking about this wonderful guy named Joseph. Joseph is the son of Jacob. He's one of 12 brothers. Joseph is the one that was sold into slavery. And he goes on down to Egypt, and despite the fact that something terrible was done to him, God blesses him. He gets sold into slavery, goes down to Egypt. All right, he begins to work in this very important man's house, all right, Potiphar's house. He's the head servant there, and a terrible thing happens to him. He gets thrown into prison. But even in prison, God's with him and raises him up to be the number one assistant to the warden. And Joseph gets this very, very special gift. He's able to interpret dreams. So these two guys that are in prison with him, both of these guys worked for the Pharaoh. Pharaoh is the king of Egypt. These two guys did what? What did they do for the king? One's the cupbearer, right? He's the one that's going to bring cup.
One's
Pharaoh,
the baker.
and one was the baker, right? And so each of these guys have dreams, and Joseph tells them what their dreams mean. So as we want to remind everybody, so if you have a choice between the cupbearer or the baker, which one do you want to be?
Be the cupbearer.
We got a cupbearer here. Anybody else? Cupbearer or baker?
Cup baker.
You want to be
No, it's cup.
You want to be the cupbearer, right? Nobody wants to be the baker? For good reason.
Because I don't like to
All right.
cook anyway. I want to be a baker.
You don't want to bake. Especially if it's Egypt. You figure the ovens are hot enough as it is. So, Egypt is
I
hot.
just changed my mind.
Yeah, you don't want to be the baker.
He doesn't want to be the baker.
Yeah, so the cupbearer is the one, his dream is interpreted that he is going to be restored back to Pharaoh, and the baker is the one who gets hanged. All right, so it's a bad thing. As the cupbearer leaves prison to be restored back to Pharaoh, Joseph asks him, "Don't forget me." The cupbearer says, "I'm not going to forget me." And what happens?
He forgot him.
The cupbearer forgets him. Years go by, and then Pharaoh has... by the way, all these dreams are coming in twos. Joseph's dreams back when he was with his family had two dreams. You had the two dreams in prison. Pharaoh has these two dreams. But the problem is none of Pharaoh's advisors can interpret his dream for him. Then, the cupbearer remembers. There was this Hebrew in prison years ago who interpreted my and the baker's dreams, and his interpretation came true. Pharaoh, I recommend you get a hold of this guy. So Joseph gets taken out of prison. He's brought before the king of Egypt. The king tells him his dreams. What was the interpretation of his dreams?
Famine.
Famine. There'll be famine for
7 years.
7 years, and then followed by, was the other way around though? What's the first thing that comes?
Feast.
7 years of feast, right? Fruitful, right? Lots of food, and then 7 years of famine. Pharaoh goes, oy vey. Right, again, that's Hebrew. It means he's not speaking Hebrew. He says, all right, what do I do about this? And Joseph advises Pharaoh. Remember, this guy Joseph was just in prison. All right? And they drag him out of prison. He's standing before the king of Egypt. He tells him his dreams. And now the king of Egypt's asking him, what do I do about this? What does Joseph say?
Gather all the grain and...
One fifth of the grain
Yep.
for 7 years. All right, that's another one of those biblical numbers, 7 years. Store it, and then that will have, when the 7 years of famine come, we'll have food to serve everybody, or at least to sell to everybody. Pharaoh says, you got it, and you're in charge of making it happen. You're my number one guy. So remember, this keeps happening to Joseph. He goes to Potiphar's wife, right? That's one of the captains of the guard, one of the generals for Pharaoh. He's made number one. He goes into prison. He's made number one working for the warden, and now he's out of prison. He's number one guy working for Pharaoh. Life could be a dream.
Number one guy.
He's constantly the number one guy. So despite every time bad things happen to him, God does something wonderful for him because he's faithful to God, and he's a part of God's plan. Amen. We've talked about all through Genesis, God is a God of promise. All right. And then a funny thing happens on the way to the forum. All right. Remember those brothers who sold
Yeah, he's
him?
his brothers.
What happens with his brothers?
He found his brother, or the father, and
Jacob, the father, sends the brothers.
to the father.
The father sends the brothers to Egypt. It's like going shopping.
Yeah.
All right? All the way down to Egypt to buy grain, to buy food. Okay? And bring it back. And so that means they got to go before Joseph. Joseph recognizes them. They don't recognize Joseph. He looks different. He's older. Okay? Egyptian men shave themselves. Hebrew men don't. So he's not bearded and stuff like that. And he says he's probably wearing makeup. The Egyptian men painted themselves and stuff like that. So he looks different, so they don't recognize him, but he recognizes the brothers. And he has a little bit of fun with them. He does. First of all, he interrogates them. Are you the only guys here? Because he thinks that he's accusing them of being spies. And now they're scared and they're answering all his questions. Is this it? Are there any more brothers? Yes, we had two others.
Benjamin.
One of them, Benjamin's back home with our father. And then one of those, no more.
Right, he died.
He croaked it. He ribbed. He's no longer with us. Kicked the bucket. All that, right? Okay. But Joseph knows, of course, I'm not dead. All right. So now, but he knows his father's alive still. Very important to him, and his younger brother. Remember, this is the only brother, full brother he has. The other brothers were all half brothers. So now he's got them by the cojones. Okay. And he does something with them.
He gives him grain and he puts the silver.
Gives them the silver back inside the grain. It's a gift. He's returning them with a gift. And sends everybody back but.
They got to bring Benjamin and the father
But
back.
Simeon
and-
stays.
yeah.
He keeps one of them. Simeon has to stay as a way, that's one of the brothers, until they come back. And they have to bring Benjamin back. Okay, so the brothers go, so they leave Simeon down there in Egypt. The brothers go back up to Canaan, where their father Jacob or Israel is, and they tell him the bad news. How does the father Jacob or Israel react?
Well, kid ain't going with you.
I ain't sending Benjamin back. I ain't sending Benjamin back. You know, the brothers were all upset. They've left Simeon down there. Judah said, look, I'll tell you right now, I'll give you two of my sons if we don't bring them back. But Israel is not having nothing to do with it. He ain't sending his baby son. The only son left of his beloved wife, Rachel. Ain't going to happen. So now they're back there in Canaan, and they eat all the food. Now the food that they bought from Egypt is gone. There's still years to go in the famine. That's where we are now. All right? So we're all caught up. Everybody know how the stage is set as we begin to see what happens in Genesis chapter 43. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Genesis chapter 43, verse 1. Now the famine was still severe in the land. So when they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go back and buy us a little more food. Verse 3, but Judah said to him, the man warned us solemnly. That's the man being Joseph, but they just know him as the number one assistant to Pharaoh. You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. Okay, yeah. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. Israel asked, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? They replied, the man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? He asked us. Do you have another brother? We simply answered his questions. How are we to know, he would say, bring your brother down here? Then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him here before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, We could have gone and returned twice. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them to the man as a gift. A little balm and a little honey, some spices and myrrh, some pistachio nuts. That's for the ice cream. Just want to let you know that.
I know. I like them even without ice cream.
That's my favorite ice cream.
I broke my teeth already on.
All right. And almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you, for you must return the silver that was put back into your mouths of your sacks. Perhaps it was a mistake. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once, and may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother, and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. So the men took the gifts and the double the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, take these men to my house, slaughter an animal and prepare dinner. They are to eat with me at noon. The man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened when they were taken to his house. They thought, we were brought here because of the silver that was put back into our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. So they went up to Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. Please, sir, they said, we came down here the first time to buy food, but the place where we stopped for the night, we opened our sacks, and each of us found silver, the exact weight in the mouth of the sack. So we have brought it back with us. We have also brought additional silver with us to buy food. We don't know who put our silver in our sacks. It's all right, he said. Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Let's pause there. We'll read the rest of the chapter tonight. But that's a lot to cover just to begin with. Okay? All right. So now we're back in Canaan again with Israel and with the brothers. Israel, Jacob, is still being stubborn, not wanting to release Benjamin. What changes his mind?
Well, he wants to eat, so he has to change his mind.
The food's
and send
gone.
Benjamin.
Yep, the food is gone. So he is at the point of possibly starving himself and his family. That's how serious he is about keeping Benjamin. The brothers actually one-up it. Remember, they tell him, okay, Judah goes back and says, by the way, it's Judah speaking, right? Not Reuben. Remember? Simeon is down in Egypt, and then there's Levi, and then there's Judah. We went over this before about Judah. We talked about in the lineage of the 12 brothers, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, we talked about of them, of all of those 4 guys, and then there's 8 more to go, including Joseph. Which line is it that eventually King David would come from, and then eventually after that, Jesus Christ himself? Judah. Why?
Because he was faithful to God.
Yeah. Remember, he got into trouble too over Tamar, right? And he got in lots of trouble. The difference was
He admitted.
his seed doesn't get destroyed.
Right.
All right. He doesn't do a terrible thing. He admits the mistake he made. All right, and says things right with Tamar. So what was wrong with Reuben?
Reuben slept with his father's concubine.
Exactly right. He defiled his father's bed. This is from really crazy people. They do crazy things in these days. Things that we wouldn't think about today. All right? So he does. He sleeps with one of his stepmothers. What's wrong with Judah and Levi? I'm sorry, not Judah and Levi. Simeon and Levi.
They want the same woman or what?
No.
They were the killers.
They were the killers.
Yeah.
They're the ones that wiped out that entire town of men. All right? Because of Dinah getting raped. Okay? And Shechem. And that Shechem wanted to marry her. They wiped them all out. Okay? So they're men of blood. They're not men of peace. So that led it to Judah. And Judah is the one that's considered righteous. Okay? Even though, again, and the story to us is that even though we screw up, make mistakes, do things that God doesn't want us to do, He still forgives us and blesses us. So there's Judah. So Judah says to his father, the man warned us solemnly, this is verse 3, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother along with us, we will go down and buy food for you. Check out verse 5. But if you will not send him, we will not go down, because the man said to us, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. So they're willing to starve. Verse going down to Egypt without Benjamin. That's how serious this is. There's death waiting for them in Egypt. And so that's what they had to do. They had to tell their father that. Verse 6. Israel asked, why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother? What were they supposed to do? This guy down there is threatening them, telling them you're spies. Which, by the way, you know what you do with spies?
No.
You hang them. Right?
Yep.
That's what you do with spies. You hang spies. It's acceptable in war. If you're caught, if you're a military man and you're not in uniform, you're caught, automatically you're a spy. If you're in the other uniforms of the enemy, you're definitely going to get hanged or a firing squad. That's gone throughout all of history. You die. That's it. They know that. They know that there's death waiting for them in Egypt. So if they're going to die, they'll die in Canaan. They don't want to go down there. This is how serious this is. So they had to tell Joseph everything he was being asked. So it wasn't their fault. Verse 8, then Judah said to Israel, his father, send the boy along with me, and we will go at once, so that we and you and our children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, I will bear the blame before you all my life. As it is, if we had not delayed, we could have gone and returned twice. So he's setting his father straight. Then their father Israel said to them, if it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them to the man as a gift. A little balm and a little honey, some spices of myrrh, some pistachio nuts and almonds. Take double the amount of silver with you. So he's making sure that the gift does look totally appropriate. That he's covered all of his expenses. That he's done what's right by Joseph in Egypt. He understands that it's possibly a mistake that the silver wound up in the sacks of his sons as they came back. But he finishes, this is in the end of verse 14. If I am bereaved, I am bereaved. What does that mean to you?
He's not going to be headed.
He's sad.
He'll be sad, he's going to be sad. The bereaved, it means
I
people...
know.
All right, okay. So in other words, if he's going to have another death, he's going to have another death. He's going to act as though there's a funeral. And this is not just, this is the rest of his sons. All of us. But God's already promised him something. What did God promise Jacob or Israel? Same promise he gave to Abraham. Same promise he gave to Isaac. He is also given to Jacob.
Come take care of us.
Yeah, but more than that.
He would have many children.
He would have many nations are going to come out of him. All right? Nations. Millions of people are going to come out from your seed. Jacob, it's okay. God's got this. So just trust God. Remember, it's the same thing for us in our salvation. We trust God, we will be saved. So this is where they go. So the men took the gifts and doubled the amount of silver, and Benjamin also. This is verse 15. They hurried down to Egypt and presented themselves to Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house. A steward is what we mostly know, someone who does feeding, all right, and caring. Also helps take care of things. To be a good steward of God's resources means you protect those things. A steward is somebody that's responsible for somebody else's, somebody else's belongings. In other words, this guy is the Joseph to Joseph. Just like Joseph was the steward to Potiphar, the steward to the warden, all right? He's the steward to Pharaoh. This steward is the steward to the steward. So it's a pretty big deal. The man, he says to him, when he saw Joseph with them, he said to his steward of his house, take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare dinner. They are to eat with me at noon. Okay? Remember, there's no refrigerators It's not like you pull a ham out. And
No,
just,
not
you know.
today. Those days,
Okay.
no.
You know,
Didn't even hear of it.
That's right. There's no Freon. They're literally, if you want a fresh meal, you had to go out to the pen and slaughter somebody, okay, or something, and that's how it worked. This is a big deal, by the way. To have it like this is a big deal. It means Joseph truly plans to honor his brothers. The man did as Joseph told him and took the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were frightened. Listen, they'd been scared to death for a long, long, long time. When they were taken to his house, they thought, we would be brought here because of the silver that was put in our sacks the first time. He wants to attack us and overpower us and seize us as slaves and take our donkeys. So they went up to the Joseph's steward and spoke to him at the entrance of the house. Please, sir, they said, we came down here for the first time to buy food. But the place where we stopped, and they tell the story over again. But the steward says what in verse 23?
It's all right, he said.
Yeah, what else?
Don't be afraid.
Oh, wait a minute. Whoa, hold the phone. Hold the phone. We love to do this. We love to talk about this. Okay. What's the most common phrase in the Bible?
Don't be afraid.
Be not afraid, right? Fear not, right? There it is again. It's the most common phrase in the Bible. Don't be afraid. Fear not. Wow. Look at the next thing this Egyptian says. Go ahead and read it.
Your God, the God of your father, has given you treasure in your sacks. I received your silver.
Then he brought Simeon out to him.
Then he brought Simeon out.
The Egyptian is giving glory to God. Remember, these are pagans. These are guys who have tons of gods. All right? You know, they're all over Egypt. You see them. They made big statues out of them. But they recognize Joseph's God. And remember, all right, when Pharaoh asked Joseph, can you interpret my dream? What did Joseph say?
No,
No, I can't interpret your dream.
but God can.
But God can. So they know who his God is. All right? Yeah. This is what happens when God can shine through you and live through you, and other people see God through you. This is the glory people give to God. Verse 24. The steward took the men into Joseph's house, gave them water to wash their feet, and provided fodder for their donkeys. They prepared their gifts for Joseph's arrival at noon, because they had heard that they were to eat there. When Joseph came home, they presented to him the gifts they had brought into the house, and they bowed down before him to the ground. He asked them how they were, and then he said, how is your aged father? You told me about. Is he still living? They replied, your servant, our father, is still alive and well. And they bowed low to pay him honor. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Deeply moved at the sight of his brothers, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. After he had washed his face, he came out and, controlling himself, said, serve the food. They served Joseph by himself, the brothers by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because Egyptians could not eat with Hebrews, for that is detestable to Egyptians. The men had been seated before him in the order of their ages, from the firstborn to the youngest, and they looked at each other in astonishment. When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. So they feasted and drank freely with him. Okay, so back to verse 24. So now the steward brings them in, and they're treated as though they're special guests. This is not how they were treated before. There was nothing in there that talked to us about anything that was graciously done to them. They were questioned, actually. They were thought to be spies. They were treated roughly by Joseph. In fact, remember, that's what they actually say. Joseph spoke harshly with them. So this is totally different. Why do you think things have changed?
Because if he gave them.
Remember, he wept the first time? Okay. So yeah, there's definitely going to be forgiveness now going in his heart. He's actually starting to change too. So, and frankly speaking, he's already punished them, right? He's already punished them. So this is totally different. Why? Do you think things have changed? Because if he gave them. He remember, he wept the first time. Okay. So yeah, there's definitely going to be forgiveness now going in his heart. He's actually starting to change too. So What else is going on?
His brother Benjamin.
Benjamin is there. Absolutely. Benjamin, his dear brother. This is the kid he was growing up with. This is, probably his closest friend. Being that they had the same mother, it was very near and dear to him. Anything else? He's setting the stage now for what's going to happen next. He's preparing them, okay, for what's going to happen next. All right. Verse 26. When Joseph came home, they presented him the gifts that they had brought to his house. Check it out. They bowed down to him. Just like in Joseph's dreams. They bowed down to him before when they were there. They're bowing down to him again. They're going to bow down to him again before we finish this chapter. So they're really living out the prophecy. Verse 27. He asked them how they were. How you guys doing? We're fine. How is your aged father? Because now he knows Benjamin's fine. He knows his little brother's okay. It's his father that he's concerned about. They replied, your servant, our father, is still alive and well. And they bowed low to pay him honor. Verse 29. As he looked about and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, he asked, is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? And he said, God be gracious to you, my son. Deeply moved at the sight of his brother, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. He went into his private room and wept there. So now this is the second time Joseph has to leave to cry. He is so overcome with this great gift God has given him. And it affects him. By the way, do you know what the shortest verse in the Bible is? It's 2 words. Gail knows it.
Amen.
Was that?
He wept.
Jesus wept. Correct. Jesus wept. When Jesus is returning to Jerusalem, before he would have the Passover and suffer and die, he looks out over Jerusalem and it says, Jesus, or he wept. All right? That's the shortest verse in the Bible. So here again, this is when we've talked a lot about how Joseph in many ways is a precursor to Jesus, we'll see more of this. So he weeps, but it's a different weeping. It's a weeping of joy.
Happiness, yeah.
It's the weeping of joy, right? It's of release, not of sorrow. Not of sorrow. Verse 31. After he had washed his face, he came out and controlling himself said, serve the food. Then we get this is a precursor of what's going to eventually happen to the Hebrews. You see there's already a distinction between the Egyptians and the Hebrews. They will not eat together. By the way, I got news for you. Eventually, after we get through all of the law, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, and stuff like that, the Hebrews aren't supposed to eat with the Egyptians either. Remember, that goes all the way to the New Testament. That's when Peter has to have a dream to be able to go to Cornelius' house.
Well, it's like we had Jewish friends, and when we went to the house, they had special dishes for us.
Yep.
They wouldn't let us use their every day. They had a special for us and a special for them.
Yep.
I found that strange.
Even within, if it's Orthodox Jews, right, even within the house, they have 2 sets of dishes.
Yep.
One for meat and one for milk
Yep.
dishes, right? Yep, my grandmother had that. So it was a separate thing, but that's for a different reason, because they remain kosher. In this case, rabbinically kosher. So here again, this is a separation. In this case, the Egyptians from the Hebrews, but later it would be the other way around. Okay. So they served him by himself, and there's all these elements here. They go in through. What do you think of verse 34? When portions were served to them from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anyone else's. No clue. Nobody's picking up on this. These guys see this, but it's like, wait a minute. Why? I mean, we're all eating. We're all eating a whole lot. But we put a whole lot more. A whole lot more was put in front of Benjamin.
He's special.
And he's very special.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very, very special.
And they gave him more food than the others.
Yep. Even though everybody's getting plenty of food, they gave him even much more.
Right. They gave him 5 times more.
Yep. And a lot of that has just to do with Joseph. Again, he is celebrating being joined again with his brother after the horrible separation he suffered.
Will his brothers pick up on that?
Apparently not.
Does it say so?
No, even in chapter 44, you won't see anything at all where they pick up on that.
No.
No.
Someone's trying to tell him.
I think, again, it's just Joseph just is sitting there, staring at the table and staring at Benjamin. Very, very grateful. Questions and comments? It's different. This again, it's much more fun reading this chapter than the last chapter. You don't see Joseph manipulating them.
Can't wait to get to 44.
44 is a real blast.
Must be a blast.
44 is a real blast.
I'm ready.
44 is a whole lot of fun.
I might take the rest of the cookies and go upstairs and read 44. I'll have enough sugar in me by then. I might do 45 too.
I already read
How many
44.
chapters till the end?
Well, it goes to 50. It goes to 50.
Again. I don't have enough
That's
cookies.
a lot of reading.
That's a lot of cookies. I know.
Yeah, and some of it's not fun. You know, we're going to get back into lineage. You know how the Bible is, especially Genesis. We'll get back into lineage, so and so and so and so and so and so down there. But that's the way the Bible works. It's a historical book, and so it talks about the genealogies, and it lets us know all about that. So now the stage is set. As I said before, when we're reading up to this point, we had to set that stage to understand this stage. Now this stage is set for the brothers to go back to Canaan, to go back to Israel, alrighty? But
He sent,
Joseph's not done playing with them yet.
I know he sent somebody after him,
Yeah. And so
and they told him to look in their sacks.
Yeah.
And if they find the cup or
a
whatever.
cup, right? Like a cupbearer, right? And so but now the question is, you just got to ask yourself, why is Joseph doing this? That's again.
Doesn't he tells his brothers here, surely, huh?
He tells his brothers what?
He's got to tell them who he is.
He sure does. He sure does.
Yeah, he does.
He does.
45, says right here.
Yeah.
45?
Yeah.
She's in the head too?
Yeah.
I think these two are doing a Bible study on their own.
I hope they are. But in this case, they're just reading ahead. Besides that, it's just, some Bibles have titles, and mine has that title for 45. All right, but it's okay, guys. It's all right. You can read these. Look, Gail and I will tell you. We've read through Genesis and many times, taught through it, discussed through it. You pick stuff up. I forgot all about the pistachio nuts. I don't know why. Again, my favorite ice cream. And yeah, that's right.
We get
that's right.
along on that because that's mine.
Well, see, that we won't get along. All right, because that means we're fighting over it. Because now my children like pistachio ice cream. Gail tries to bring some home for me. All right. It's gone.
Pistachio cake? That's
Oh, I like
good, too.
pistachio cake. It's funny, but I won't eat
Anything with
pistachio
pistachio.
nuts. Pistachio nuts don't do anything for me. I like pistachio ice cream.
Ice cream's good.
So
Oh, I like the nuts.
That's
the groveling continues here, okay? The absolute groveling continues from Joseph's brothers as he continues to humble them. Although they're fairly humble, don't you think? Now he's going to take one more crack at them. One more. He's going to let them wet themselves one more time, all right, and before he reveals himself, and then brings peace. And then the story kind of shifts, and then we get back into, and we finish. And remember, Genesis, at this point in Genesis, it's very important to remember the story of Joseph, because the last thing we talk about in Genesis is Joseph's death. And that, remember, he's in Egypt. They don't just put you in the ground in Egypt if you're famous. What do they do with you if you're in Egypt?
Put you in one of them triangle type things.
Well, they're rectangles, but you can sarcophagus. All right?
Well, no, with
The pyramid.
Oh, the pyramids, the triangle-like things. You're so funny. All right, but what do they do to you personally? What do they do to your body? Come on, some of the best horror movies ever made.
yeah,
Bomb you? I don't
They
know.
embalm you is what happens,
Yeah.
but they mummify you.
That's
The
right,
mummy,
yeah.
okay? Come on, guys. I mean, every generation has a story of the mummies.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
and that's important to remember that because for those, a long time ago we studied the book of Exodus. Exodus starts with then a Pharaoh rose up in Egypt who had forgotten Joseph. And then it's the story of Moses. And when Moses leaves the children out of Israel out of Egypt, right, they do carry one body with them, Joseph's, to bury him in Canaan.
Even though he reveals himself to his brothers and his father, he goes back and lives in Egypt?
No, he doesn't go back. He's living in Egypt.
No, I know, but he doesn't.
stays.
All right, here's the question you really want to ask. What does the Pharaoh know about him? Does the Pharaoh know he's a Hebrew?
No?
Yes.
He
Oh, he
does,
does.
doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yes. The Pharaoh knows he's a Hebrew. All right? Everybody knows he's a Hebrew. Potiphar made him a slave. All right? Potiphar works for Pharaoh. And then throws him in jail. And then, if I remember correctly, I can go back and look. Pretty sure the cupbearer says there's a Hebrew in prison who reads, and that's the reason why Pharaoh recognizes his God, and the steward here recognizes his God. Okay? So, no, he's considered a convert. All right? But he maintains his identity as a Hebrew. It's, even though he gets to eat. Remember, Joseph's not even sitting with the Egyptians here. He's sitting by himself. He's sitting by himself. The Egyptians are sitting by themselves. And the Hebrews are sitting by themselves. All right, now, I don't know if that was a regular thing. I don't know if that's if that happened outside. But now, so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Pharaoh reacts to the fact that Joseph's reunited with his family.
Yeah, because Pharaoh wouldn't want him to leave.
Wouldn't want him to leave. That's a good point. Remember that when we get to that portion.
Yeah.
All right, when we see what Pharaoh actually does.
He doesn't want to lose him.
He absolutely doesn't want to lose him and wants to celebrate him. This guy saved Egypt.
Yeah.
All right? They were still in the middle of the famine.
Made him rich.
And made him rich. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're going to see. You're going to see. Because remember, they're paying for this grain. This grain's not just being handed out for the fun of it.
Yeah, Pharaoh gets all the money, right?
Yeah, the riches of Egypt, yep. That means all the Egyptians got to go back out and work and raise money for themselves. And so there's a lot going on. We'll get to that because that's all in the chapters that are yet to come, what Joseph has done for Pharaoh. No, trust me. Pharaoh really thinks, yeah, this Joseph guy's great. Hence the reason why when the Pharaoh rises up and forgets Joseph, he turns on the Hebrews living in Goshen and enslaves them. Again, to make themselves rich.
So as long as Joseph was alive.
Even long after he was dead, Pharaoh still remembered him. But then eventually, as history went on, a Pharaoh rose up who had forgotten Joseph.
So that turned the Hebrews into slaves.
Turned the Hebrews into slaves.
And Moses comes. And they took Joseph out of Egypt.
And that's one part of the Exodus.
That's not shown in the movie now.
It sure is shown in the movie.
Is it shown?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the possession leaving the gate.
You got it. And they're carrying Joseph's body out. Okay, so this is how Genesis rolls into Exodus, the historical situation. Remember, Exodus eventually, becomes a story of the great general for Moses, Joshua.
Well, yeah, we already
That's
been
my
for him.
grandson's name.
Yeah, it's a great name, which is actually the name of Jesus, Yeshua. All right, and so that rolls into Exodus in the story of Joshua. Pretty powerful stuff. And then Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Now you see the rise of the law in Deuteronomy and Numbers, and that's the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. That's the holy books of Judaism.
So
is the
that's
Torah.
what Jesus used to go to the synagogue to read.
They read the Torah. They also read Tanakh. That's the rest of the Old Testament. Okay, so they read Torah and Tanakh, and but the Torah is essential to Jews. That's their holy books, and so very important. So, anyways, that's where this all comes from. That's where this happens. So again, these are no small stories. These are no small stories. And by the way, considering how how the Jews are today, there's not that many Jews. The Jewish people are a very small number of people. There are more Jews in New York City than there are in Israel. Okay, because we're still spread out throughout the world. But anyways, so this ending of Genesis is very important to understanding the story of Moses, because we finish up with Joseph and how terrible things changed. How terrible. Joseph, as we study about how Pharaoh responds to Joseph, and then to think eventually that Pharaoh's going to enslave the Hebrews, it's terrible. And then comes Moses. Questions and comments? You guys need to get this stuff down. I know. You get this stuff down. You get it back and forth.
It's very interesting, really. The way you teach it is very interesting.
Well, thanks. And of course, when you look at the context, the whole big picture.
Yeah.
Remember, this is all setting up the whole thing. Everything's all setting up for Jesus. Eventually, for Jesus, this is all being set up. And Jesus refers to these stories, as does Paul and Peter. Stephen goes through this whole lineage in his sermon before he gets stoned to death. So it's very important. And remember, when Jesus comes to teach, he's only really overwhelmingly just teaching Jews. The Jewish people were very heavy on education. They knew Torah. They knew Psalms. They knew Proverbs. They knew this stuff. It's when Paul and Peter start teaching Gentiles, they have to be non-Jews, Gentiles. They have to go to real fundamental basics, very simple stuff. They can't get too heavy because they don't know Torah and they don't know Tanakh. Alrighty. Okay. All right, guys. We'll see you next week. Take care and God bless.